Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Vertical Blocks, where we'll be bringing to you perspectives from across the crypto, DeFi, and larger Web3 ecosystem from the perspective of the Fantom Foundation itself. This will serve as a vehicle to better understand what we're working on, how we think and approach the different problems that we're facing in the space, and of course, as well as a way to bring in other guests to share their perspectives across not just what's happening on Fantom, but in the broader Web3 ecosystem. So that being said, I'm Juan Angel, head of marketing here at Fantom, and I'm happy to have Sam Harcourt, director of business development, and Michael Kong, our CEO. So thanks, guys, for joining me today.
Thanks, Juan.
Thanks. Glad to be here. Yeah, for the very first episode.
It's exciting.
Of a very long series.
That's right. It's gonna be decades long, everybody. So get strapped into your seats.
It's gonna be from 0 to N. Yeah.
That's right. And so I think a really good place to start would just be to set up the framework for what is Fantom, so that we can share a perspective starting from there. So Michael, Sam, whoever wants to take it, tell us a little bit about what differentiates Fantom from all the other layer one blockchains out there competing right now. And tell us a little bit about how the foundation itself views its mission statement in terms of both its business development and growth, and how it's actually progressing the core technology itself.
Yeah, sure. I'll take this one. And I think I'll focus more on the narrative side, and maybe we can jump in the BD side a little bit later. So on the narrative side, that's such a great question, because we do get asked it a lot, and it's great to kind of clear that up today. A big thing is people ask us, why are you so focused on the technology? And in short, what we are is an infrastructure provider to applications and dApps. And so what we're focused on is something called vertical scaling. So we want to do this so we keep the crypto magic alive. And what I mean by crypto magic is what we see across the board in other layer ones and ecosystems is that once an application reaches a certain point in the business cycle where they're really hitting the adoption phase, and they're getting multiple users and great activity within the dApp, they tend to need to branch out and create their own solutions. So whether it's some sort of roll up, whether it's a side chain, whether it's a layer two, they move away from the core network that they grew up on, and that sort of takes away that crypto magic. So you can see that it's happened across the board with DYDX, a perpetual trading exchange on Ethereum, or something like Crabadder. And it just throws a number of hurdles at them. So, now instead of thinking about what makes that application great, they're thinking about all these network problems, security of the network, thinking of, how the network should run, our incentives within that network, token incentives. And that the token incentives alone almost turn dApps that were once working together in a community on the same network apart, because now they're focused on building their own networks, and they tend to move away from each other. So it's rather than being more cooperative, it becomes competitive. And that's a really key aspect that Fantom has. And it's quite unique compared to other chains. It is how everyone works well together. Whether it's in a GameFi application working really closely with a DeFi application, it's really cool to see that magic between two different applications. So generally, an application is only going to move across to another network because it's some sort of, cash grab, that they just want to do when they want to have some sort of token they can build more economics around, or B, it's that network is no longer servicing them and giving them the requirements that they need to kind of scale out their own applications. So that's what we're so focused on, is providing the infrastructure for apps to build on, and make sure that they can scale and we can scale with them. And not only that, the people that they build with and build relationships with, they can scale with them as well. So that's a big part of what we're pushing.
Yeah, and just to add, like what Sam mentioned, I mean, you've got the Fantom ecosystem, and I mentioned this point like many times before in different podcasts, and you got the Fantom Foundation. And we at the Fantom Foundation, our aim is kind of like twofold. One is to work on the underlying technology, and the second is to work on encouraging the growth and development of the Fantom ecosystem, right? Because that's essentially why the foundation exists, right? So when it comes to the technology, we like to talk about like, our technology approach is really vertical scaling, right? In other words, we don't want to create side chains. We don't want to create, like parallel chains, compared to the Fantom main chain, where basically, our applications, that are unable to like scale on the main chain because the main chain has limitations. Have to create a side chain and go to move the computation there, because there are a lot of like other layer ones that like do that, and there are trade-offs in doing that. Because yes, if you're running like a side chain, or what's known as like a subnet or whatever you want to call it, yes, you do get much better performance. That's true, compared to like if you stayed on the main chain. However, it comes at the cost of security, because the entire validator set of the layer one is not available for you to secure the transactions on the side chain, right? And so what that means is that you have to have another layer of validators. And so as Sam mentioned, that's like another problem you have to worry about, right? Then you have to worry about underlying security, how to make sure my network doesn't get hacked, how to make sure that network doesn't turn off, how do I make sure that transactions keep processing, etc., that you don't get DDoS, etc. Well, you want to kind of like avoid that, right? So our approach is not to go down a sidechain route. It's to really focus on vertical scaling, and that comes down to the core and the middleware development. It's all about improving transaction processing, improving the way the smart contracts execute, improving core consensus technology. And as each improvement is made and pushed out to the network, you get more and more scalability, right? Which means that when people launch apps on Fantom, they'll be fast, they'll be cheap, secure, even when there are many more users than already currently exist on the network. So that's what really we mean by vertical scaling. I'm sure we can go into a lot more detail about it.
And just to quickly riff off that, what Mike said, a big part of it, what we do is we're solely focused on the infrastructure, on that kind of pronged approach, which Mike mentioned. It's encouraging dApps to deploy, and then the technological approach. But what we won't do is come into the space and compete with you. So say we learned this lesson with Arteon. So Arteon now serves more as like an index for NFTs, and something that people can fork as all the code's open source, and it kind of encourages development of NFT marketplaces on Fantom. But what we won't do is come in and the foundation create a game to compete with people who are building out games. So we're not going to create like some sort of application to come in and kind of distort the market. We're big believers in kind of the free market economy, and we don't want to warp I guess the natural growth of the ecosystem by coming in with some sort of dApp that the foundation specifically creates.
Yeah, all the technology focus is really on the underlying chain itself. So the tooling, security, consensus, smart contract processing. We're not in the business of doing like application development. Apart from those kind of like applications that are kind of common across ecosystems in general, like wallets, and like applications for governance voting, etc. Apart from those kind of like ecosystem-based applications, we're definitely not creating anything that will want to compete against people who want to build on Fantom.
Yeah, I wanted to say to that point, Sam, about Arteon and moving forward. I think a healthy and important part of scaling any sort of technology is learning from mistakes and shortcomings. And so one of the things that I think was given a lot of thought, and I know it was given a lot of thought, and it wasn't a decision taken lightly, was re-architecting the grants programs, right? And so whereas the decision itself, I think, was made with very sound logic in mind, the communication, maybe we could have done a better job on it, and I think that's one place where we're going to improve moving forward. And that's part of the reason for this podcast as well, is to establish those clear lines of communication between ourselves and users, builders, the community, investors at large. And so my question for you is, one of the things we hear a lot is VCs, whether that's with a question mark or an exclamation mark. It doesn't really matter. People want to know how exactly are we promoting the growth of the ecosystem. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about how have we re-architected that grants program moving forward, and how are we promoting growth for ecosystem dApps? And also, on the flip side, Fantom itself, how do we view the relationship between ourselves and VCs and investor capital?
Yeah, totally. So with that last grants program, we admitted that we did not. That was something that we learned from a lot. And what we did do was we followed it with every protocol who was affected, and we offered different sorts of support directly to them, and had meetings and tried to remedy that. And what we're doing now is just focusing on what we can, and that's the future. I mean, people can keep looking at the past, but right now we're setting up some pretty cool avenues for funding for projects building on Fantom. And it kind of comes in different verticals, right? So you have the ecosystem support vote, which we've just passed, which has been awesome. So thanks everybody for getting behind the governance vote and pushing that through. What Vault is it's basically a redirection of 10% of the burn rate today. Well, we have a 30% burn rate in total, but 10% of that burn rate is now going to be allocated towards Vault, and that's going to accrue in value. So I think last month about 2.7 million Fantom was paid in fees. So if you use that, it's going to be about $250,000 Fantom a month might be going into this Vault. Obviously, this is quite volatile, so I can't give an exact estimate. But just going off last month's numbers, that's something that we might look to expect. What's really cool with that is it's quite open. So there's no sort of prerequisites. There's no sort of requirements. It's just getting the community support to push that through governance, and we'll distribute that through the Vault for now until we can make that automatic. Another thing that we're doing is working with Gitcoin. So they've been great to talk to. And we want to be their guinea pig for what they have is called their Gitcoin 2.0 or V2. And we're going to be a part of that. So hopefully that will come out a bit later this year. And we're going to slowly ramp up the kind of funding matches that we're going to have with them. Additionally, like we've also that you kind of touched on was the VC side. So what we've done is created something called the VC Ecosystem Initiative. So what this is partnering up with VCs who we think are cool and who have shown a great interest in investing within the Fantom ecosystem and ecosystem projects. And what we've done is partnered with 7 or 6 VCs officially as of now, and they're quite, I'd say, notable firms, and they all want to get involved. So what we do is we just pass on the deal flow that we get and pass that on to them, and then they invest and take opportunities where they like. Obviously, we're not going to force them onto anything, but it's great to have that, I guess, streamlined flow of if you're a dApp and you want to grow, you now have 3 avenues to kind of get access to funding. That's the Vault, that's through Gitcoin when it launches. And that's also through our VC partners. So that's kind of what we're looking at, and what we are forming right now for pathways for dApp applications that want to launch. And so far, it's been really successful, and that's been great to see.
Yeah, and just to add to what Sam mentioned, I mean, we're supporting projects in multiple ways. Not just through as Sam mentioned, rounds that we want to be participating in, as well as the ecosystem Vault funding, where the vote just passed the past couple of days or so. I mean, we provide support in terms of technical integration as well. So Juan, in particular, speaks from all projects that want to deploy in Fantom and kind of works them through, all the deployment steps, any questions they have, because obviously we, are very familiar with the Fantom network. We also provide co-marketing support, as you've seen, with tweets and sometimes even with traditional and crypto media. We also just announced today that Watchdog is going to be launched in about a month or two. And Watchdog is this continuous auditing system, and not just a continuous auditing system. It's also like a smart contract explorer, where for every single transaction that performs on the network, executes on the network, you can actually get into a lot of depth as to how the transaction performed at each sequence of its execution, right? So it can give you a lot of information, transactions, and basically just to see how transactions actually execute, right? So these sorts of tools will allow smart contract developers to build applications that have security in mind, that where they know that there's kind of a bit of a, if I can use this term, a bit of a guardian angel or a bit of a check and a balance, kind of help people out as they're launching their applications, as well as all the other support that we mentioned before. And we also can provide legal support as well. Projects can email us in confidence to our legal counsel. We just onboarded another lawyer to work with Fred called Eli Bernstein, who has a lot of experience around crypto and the law for at least the past 5 or 6 years. And I've actually known him for since about 2018. And so they're there to help answer any questions that anyone might have, about any legal concerns that they may have in whatever they're building. So we can provide financing, technical support. There's a lot of support that we can provide to ecosystem projects. And often that we set up Telegram groups with ecosystem projects, and they reach out to us whenever they want to connect with somebody else in the network, whenever they want to do some sort of announcement, whenever they basically have any questions about anything, and we try and answer them as quickly as possible. So we provide a lot of support from the foundation. I know there's some people out there who kind of complain that maybe we don't provide that much, and what does the foundation really do all day? Well, as I've just outlined, with facts, this is what the foundation does help out with projects on a daily basis, and it does consume a lot of our time, but it's worth it because we're here to support the community.
And just a really cool thing about that Watchdog announcement, what I really like about it is it means that if you're a bit experimental with the kind of applications that you want to build, especially in the DeFi space, it can be quite daunting. That there could be potentially hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, and if it goes to very crazy, maybe possibly billions of dollars, it could all be locked up in your contracts, right? And to have that kind of continuous auditing done by something like Watchdog within the network that you're building, it can kind of give you a bit more confidence to be, okay, look, I have this really kind of cool idea. I'm a bit nervous about launching it, but hey, I'm going to give it a go. It can kind of encourage that a bit more, which we really want to provide, right? It's just those tools to kind of help people build and grow the network.
Yeah, so I mean, that breakdown gives a pretty clear explanation of how the foundation is providing support, both in terms of VC and capital connections, operational support, whether that's financial, legal, or logistical. And so one other thing I want to cover is, aside from the way that we ourselves are supporting ecosystem projects, it's back to the VC question mark of maybe establishing just clearing the air and providing some clarity around, what is the Fantom Foundation's relationship to VC capital for its, raising for its own core technology, historically speaking. Where do we stand now, and why do we view why are we taking the decisions we're taking in terms of how we're positioned to raise capital or not?
Sure. I'll just we're not raising capital right now as a foundation, as I'm aware. But right now it's more focusing on the projects that are building, right? It's more for the people who really need funding right now are the people in the kind of the seed Series A stage, where they're just kind of expanding their user base, or they have an idea that needs to grow, and they need the funds to execute. So that's what simply this kind of ecosystem partners initiative is all about. Is about just connecting people who want to build with people who can fund, and letting them build on Fantom. So that's that. We have nothing against VCs. I believe they play a very important role in helping those projects build and expand. There's that saying that goes, it's better to have 80% of something than nothing of and a level of nothing, or 0% of nothing. So I mean, it's better to have that type of support, and it's not just that capital support they provide. They do provide some other kind of connection routes and maybe advice from what they've seen work. It's kind of, that's why we took the time to pick some of these VCs and interacted with them a bit more and see what kind of people they are. And so far, they've all been really great and really cooperative. So our relationship with VCs is very friendly, and we're very eager to kind of chat with them a bit more publicly and kind of get the decks going from the cool projects to them and seeing them build on Fantom.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we have had discussions in the past in VCs, like investing directly with the foundation and also investing in ecosystem projects. And in fact, I actually just talked to another VC last night, quite a big VC that is quite interested in potentially kind of doing both, right? So we might end up doing both in the end. I mean, just discussions at the moment, and when we have something to announce, we'll definitely announce it. But we are talking to VCs, and our priority is really funding, helping to fund projects on the Fantom ecosystem. So with these VCs that we got on board, and there are more that are coming, whenever if a project needs some funding and would like to get in contact with a particular VC or any number of those VCs, we can do a warm introduction. We can make that introduction happen, right? As opposed to just cold calling them or messaging them cold. We can do warm introductions, and this will be available, as a service to all kind of projects that are deployed on the Fantom network or are looking to deploy shortly on the Fantom network. So again, it's just another service, another value add that we're trying to help with projects on the Fantom ecosystem itself, especially during these times when I know it's a little bit tougher to raise money, etc. Not just in the cryptocurrency industry, but also just really.
Yeah, I think both of those perspectives shine a light on the core key point I think I wanted to highlight, which is that everything we're doing is a conscious decision, and the Fantom Foundation has historically raised capital, but right now the core focus around raising capital is connecting ecosystem projects to the VCs themselves, rather than the core focus being having the foundation raise money for its own ends and means. So, I mean, I think that's something important for anybody listening to realize, is that all of these things are calculated decisions. And right now, the core priority is connecting ecosystem projects to VCs and capital. So that's definitely a point I wanted to cover. On the topic of growth, Sam, here's something I'm sure you've never heard of before. But the question, when BD, when business development. And so I'd love for you to share your perspective on what business development within an industry like crypto means. And of course, you've already mentioned a lot of the initiatives that are driving this growth. But what does it mean to you? And why do you think Fantom's uniquely positioned to excel at it?
Yeah, that's a great question. When BD basically, especially with the kind of announcements that we've seen recently with some big name partners and big name L1s as well. So, well, with business development, I guess it can be kind of a vague term, but our focus is more that B2B strategy at the moment, and it's not focused not on like handing out free incentives or just free capital, which I see as a very short term thinking. It's more, providing the tools and the environment so that these applications can build and businesses can flourish. So we do that. We've kind of mentioned a lot of it already on this call and kind of in kind of the VC discussion. But again, it's that onboarding experience. So we still get a high amount of inbound traffic coming of projects looking to deploy on Fantom. They want to get involved. They're not sure how. And generally, I or myself or yourself or a number of other people within the foundation are contact points. And we provide them with an onboarding experience, whether that's marketing support that we provide, whether it's technical support we provide, legal support as Mike mentioned, or even just ensuring that kind of coordination between cool projects and teams that we think might work well together. Speaking of that crypto magic before, we really like to see that. It's definitely something that's very unique to crypto. And then again, it's that access to capital. So through those there's 3 different pathways: through the vault, through the Gitcoin rounds that we're looking at setting up, as well as through the VC partners that we've kind of just initiated. So that's the onboarding experience. It's a capital. It's also the community and events is a big highlight, right? Everyone wants to get together, and I mean, as great it is, speaking to you both online, it would be great if we're in the same room together right now. And I think that is a big part of what a community is being able to get together. It's shaking hands and talking about things, and that is also another way to kind of build that rhythm and get into the motion of finding good partners and building together. So that's something that we want to focus on is the events. And so what we've done is we've hired some more people and we're currently in the process of setting up these events. I think we're going to start quite small and look to scale that up throughout the years and make sure that, we do it correct and we find out what works well and we, push on what does work well. So it's going to be a very, practical approach, but, I'm looking forward to the next one and hopefully I can attend. Again, it's working on the governance side of things. So, working with the vault, making sure that passes, talking with validators, seeing what they, how they like the network going, and if they have any, any issues, and helping them grow, as well as outreach. So, it's not just about, when I say outreach, it's not just about big partnerships with big names to try to stoke prices up. It's of the gas token. It's nothing to do with that. If you do want a big name partnership, which we are engaging with different sorts of Web2 companies and different sorts of large corporations, but it's more building that long-term relationship. So that when our technology is ready to handle a high user base, we're talking millions, tens of millions users a day. We will be ready, and they won't have to do what I kind of mentioned at the start of this call, which was deploy on Fantom, find it's too small for them, and then have to fork or go to an L2 or provide their own chain, right? We want to make sure that we establish these relationships, they're strong, and the technology is there to back that when we execute these larger partnerships. So that's a big part of those big name partnerships. I believe it's not just a quick announcement of something. It's more that long-term relationship. And ensuring that our infrastructure can provide a high volume, because I guarantee you when someone like that does go across, it's not going to be for a small amount of users. It's going to be for quite some. It'll be for a lot of people. And then the last thing I'll mention is it's as an infrastructure provider, we want to provide the right tooling. So Mike already mentioned before, it's that market watch. That is such a unique tool to have. It's something that's quite ecosystem specific. I don't think you'd find that a lot with other maybe chains. So I think something like that is just another cool way we provide support, to builders and therefore the community. Because the big thing is, we're not so focused on the very end people that are using Fantom. We're very focused on that B2B client base, right? It's helping the dApps grow and giving them the right, tools and environment to do so.
Yeah, we recently onboarded, hired an events planning guy called Annie Bird, aka Bird Mania. I think he's quite all known in the Fantom community, and already he's planning several events over the next few months, right? And so we're working with him, to find the venue, how can we do publicity around it, how can we, get users to attend, and some of the events will be in Europe and probably some in the US as well, being hosted around similar sort of events that are happening in the blockchain space. So we're actively planning that as well. And the foundation has been hiring people even during this period of time. Fortunately, we're able to save up a decent amount of money and generate a decent treasury that we can deploy even in these bear market times. So we hired an additional legal counsel, as I mentioned before, Eli Bernstein. We've hired three to four new engineers on the team over the past few months as well, particularly three that are working directly with Bernard himself on the middleware development, on the new smart contract engine work, as well as hiring a specific events planner as well. So we're definitely realize that now that the COVID restrictions have kind of passed by, that we should be hosting a lot more events in person, because you just get much better connections. You just get discussions happen a lot faster when you meet in person. And it's just kind of a generally good environment, rather than just always connecting to somebody over the internet, which is fine, but in-person events also help complement that. So we're definitely focusing on that as well.
Well said. I want to go back into the topic a little bit more specifically of scaling out and hiring for the team. So with one of the recent updates we made where we published some of the research our R&D team had found, I think there was a lot of excitement about that. And if you look at the authors of the article, there's some heavy hitters. So I'd love, Michael, if you could go in and maybe for whoever's missed the initial announcement about Professor Schultz, share a little bit about him, your relationship to him, what you hope he'll build here at Fantom, and the team under him as well.
Yeah, sure. So the recent announcement we did from Professor Schultz's work and his team was about some findings that we had done by profiling the Opera network, or the Fantom mainnet, right? And so what I mean by profiling is they've created a lot of tools to help us kind of analyze the performance of smart contracts and transactions on the entire chain, right? So from the very beginning of time to the most recent block, right? And that's required a lot of work. And the reason we do this profiling work is, one, so that we have the infrastructure that when we implement changes and improvements to the Fantom network, whether they're core or middleware development, all developments performance very, very quickly, right? The second reason why is because it will help us in our analysis figure out what are the bottlenecks for the Fantom network in particular. What are the bottlenecks when it comes to processing transactions, which is not just to do with consensus, it's to do with communication between nodes, it's to do with the speed at which the virtual machine executes, it's to do with the speed at which reads and writes are done from smart contracts to the underlying chain. If we have profiling infrastructure set up in place, we can figure out what the bottlenecks are and help devise solutions for them. And so that's pretty much what Bernard has done for the past couple of months. And he's also built a unique profiling tool. Well, originally they built this for Ethereum about a year or two ago, and they recently ported it and upgraded it for the Fantom network, right? And it's called being able to analyze chain data using what are known as substates, right? Basically, it's just into different data structures to allow parallel analysis of the chain, right? So instead of, for example, profiling or analyzing on the chain data taking, say, 10 days, if you parallelize it using this new method, it can be done within a few hours, right? And this continuous profiling allows us to keep testing the network, as I just mentioned. So a lot of this work is being led by Bernard. So Bernard is a full professor at the University of Sydney in the School of IT, and he is the head of what is known as programming languages. And programming languages consist of basically how you construct the programming language, how a programming language actually executes underneath, which is to do with these technologies called like compilers, which translates the human code that you write in a programming language to something else that can be read by a machine, right? And sent over to what's known as a machine is basically a software layer that executes a sequence of instructions and saves the results to the distributed ledger itself, right? So when you see, and when it comes to transaction processing, it's not like, oh, you submit a transaction to the network and then it just kind of gets like passed to the to the nodes and network and then added to a block, right? Well, it actually takes many more steps than just that. And in particular, when you're executing a transaction on a smart contract, it goes through that stage of, the instructions get executed by the virtual machine, and the results have to be continuously like read and written to the underlying chain, depending on the complexity of the smart contract, right? And so Bernard's background is on this specific technology. It's on virtual machine development. It's on compiler research and development. It's on programming languages development. And in fact, he's already spent like the past like 5 years specifically researching performance and security issues related to the Ethereum virtual machine and how smart contracts execute on Ethereum. And I was part of that research team actually in 2016 and 2017, and we did a lot of work back then. But the work that he's doing right now, is vastly improved upon that work that we did in 2016 and 2017. And some of that work actually later became what is known as Watchdog now. So I've known Neville and Yanis, who've been running the Watchdog technology out of Malta and the University of Athens for a number of years now. And so Bernard is leading, he's our chief research officer. He's leading the efforts primarily on this middleware development. And under him, he's got 3 individuals that that he's previously worked with or that he supervised before. So one of them is Wasuvi. So she did her PhD under Bernard a few years ago at the University of Sydney, and her research was basically on parallelization of execution of programming languages, right? So in other words, how do you execute programming languages in the fastest way possible? And so a lot of her research has been working with Bernard on doing the profiling work, trying to do it in the fastest way possible. And her work will be very much focused on performance orientation of smart contract execution, right? The second individual is a guy who lives in Prague. A guy who lives in the Czech Republic called Kamil, right? And so Kamil actually is a postdoc that he didn't study under Bernard, but he was recruited by the University of Sydney to work on the research into the EVM, right? So we had given a grant to the University of Sydney back in 2018 to help them do research and development into like virtual machines. So we could kind of use that technology for Fantom's benefit. And he was one of the postdocs that was recruited by Bernard, I think in 2019. So he's already very familiar with smart contracts execute. His background was on smart contract security in particular, and also compiler development. So he's very familiar with the way that programming languages work. He used to work with Bernard at Oracle Labs as well, I believe. And so he has done like a lot of research already into smart contracts. So he's taking all of that knowledge he's already developed over the past few years and applying that to us. The third person that will be joining next week is an individual out of Switzerland called Herbert Jordan. Now, Herbert used to be an L5 or an L6 engineer at Google, so very senior Google engineer. And he knows Bernard because he used to work with Bernard, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, at Sun Microsystems, which was later acquired by Oracle in Brisbane, where Bernard was the co-founder of Sun Microsystems for Brisbane. And later that was acquired by Oracle, and they worked at Oracle, right? And his background was very much in compiler and virtual machine development, in particular, working with Bernard on developing software to be used to analyze the security of Java-based applications. This is like Java software that's used in Android. They're using many different applications, banking applications, etc. So his background is also in security, but also compiler virtual machine development. So when he joins us next month, he will be working specifically on virtual machine and compiler development along with Bernard. So that's basically the team structure, and this is like the team background and what they're going to be working on for Fantom over the next few years at least.
Yeah, that's why I'm so excited about this series of research articles that we're putting out, because it really gives the entire ecosystem a clear view of the caliber of the team behind the technology, right? Whereas I think in the past they worked a little bit more in isolation, a little bit more like under the cover of darkness, if we want to call it that, until things were launched. This is going to give everybody clear insight into what they're working on in real time, and also understanding, the big brains behind it who really are in the trenches building this stuff. Now,
Yeah, sorry, and just so we're going to add to what you mentioned, Juan, we've got a series of articles that are coming out as well. So I think one of the mistakes in the past was, as you mentioned, not really communicating the sort of work that had been done, the team's background, and sort of only announcing it when the work was completely finished. Well, what we want to do is we want to continuously talk about what work that we're doing, so we can take people along the whole development journey. So that profiling article that was released, I think about a week ago, that's the one out of a series of articles that are already being written up right now. And they're going to cover, more of the profiling work that's been done, with the latest results. It's going to be talking about, the preliminary structure of what the new Fantom virtual machine is going to be like. It's going to be talking, compiler will be structured. It's basically going to be talking about the entire journey of the research and development. So it won't just be like, one day surprise, there's suddenly a new virtual machine. It will be like, no. You'll see the entire journey. And so when we announce that a virtual machine is ready to be deployed on the Fantom network, you will already have been aware that it was coming. So, we want to be a lot more transparent, not just on the BD side, not just in terms of our operations, but also in terms of the technology as well, because I think that's something that, we could definitely improve on. And so we've taken note, and I think this will help along the way.
On the topic of transparency, I hope that this podcast will serve as a medium for precisely that, to establish those lines of communication. And what that does at the same time as give everybody clear insight into what's happening is also dispel, narratives that are maybe fully speculative, runaway narratives that are totally untethered from reality or what we're doing here. Like, oh, I heard the foundation is pivoting to spaceships and now everybody thinks we're trying to go to Mars, things like that. And so on that topic, one of these myths that I think could use some clarification for anybody listening is, what is Andre Cronje's role at the foundation? What is his involvement? Just to kind of put that to bed.
Yeah, well, as Andre mentioned before on the Delphi Digital podcast, he's still, he's been advising on the foundation over the past few years, and he's going to continue be doing that work, and that nothing has really changed, right? So Andre is not as public as he once was before. Obviously, he's not active on Twitter anymore, and that's for like a number of reasons that I won't go into. But basically, like, Andre is like being a great help for us, right? He's one of the key reasons why Fantom exists right now. If Andre wasn't around, I don't think Fantom would exist right now. And the reason I say this is because I've gone, I worked with Andre first in like 2018, Andre, with regards to Fantom, right? And there was a lot of issues that happened with Fantom at the beginning that I think some people are aware of in the community. Maybe more recent people that have joined, maybe not necessarily aware of it, but Fantom used to be like a Korean project, right? And in 2018, we were told by the Korean team that, we have these great ideas on how to achieve, asynchronous processing of transactions, and it will be fast achievement better than Ethereum. And we want to have like a simulation or a testnet done, and we're going to launch it soon in a few months, and it's amazing, and we have these postdocs on board, and we have associate professors, etc. All of this stuff sounded good, and they was a bit naive at the time, thinking that, wow, this stuff is amazing. How do they do it? Wow, they must just be like geniuses, etc. And then it turned out that it wasn't true, right? It turned out that, they were just like lying, not telling us the truth, making a whole bunch of false promises. And, we had to figure out what to do. And Andre was involved at the time. And when all of this kind of like happened, Andre, told me that, we should give it a go, that he has a lot of ideas around, how we could maybe achieve the original vision of Fantom, this asynchronous processing of transactions, and that, we should try and build a new team, right? And so he was very much involved in helping build out that new team, exploring, ideas around, this processing of transactions, around consensus. He helped write some of the original code that's there. And, since then, he's helped us out with a lot of connections in the space because obviously he's well connected. He helped us with treasury management. He got us very early into DeFi, which allowed us to basically like significantly increase, the amount of reserves that we have to continue the project going forward. And he's given us technical advice before. He's done a lot of help for us.
Yeah.
So that sort of like work as he's himself on the Delphi Digital podcast is going to continue. Like nothing's really changed now. I guess what has changed is that maybe he's not going to be as public anymore for a number of reasons, but he's still helping us out for sure, and I do like really appreciate that.
Yeah, and just to let everyone know that the ecosystem support vault, which was kind of which I put through, that was his idea. He kind of suggested that in a chat we're all having.
Yeah, that's an example of it. Yeah.
So I mean that was totally him. And then I think he likes to just give the idea. And he's like, you guys execute it. I'm like, okay, like we'll get it done. But yeah, he's definitely much involved.
Yeah, I mean, I think providing that clarity is important. That he's involved. He's simply made a decision to step back outside of the limelight. And everything is moving forward business as usual. So that being said, like I have a couple takeaways here from the introspection that I think we've done in trying to be honest with ourselves about places to improve and where we have taken those steps to move forward. Is one, we had a grants or incentives program that we realized was detrimental to the growth of the ecosystem as a whole in the long run, and we re-architected it, right? And there's several different ways we've covered today in which it's going to be even better moving forward. Could we have communicated it more clearly? Absolutely. I think we're all in agreement about that. And that's part of the reason for this podcast and the continuous attempt to communicate things more often and more frequently. And then, the second part as well is I think we all agree that a lot of the research and some of the more important work that's being done has been done behind the scenes under the cover of darkness, as I said. And now we're going to bring that to the forefront so people can see exactly what we're working on and the technological developments and breakthroughs that we're making. And last but not least, business development is something that has always been going on. It's still going on. Different people have different definitions for it, but it should start to become clear and apparent with all of the interest coming into the ecosystem that it's pulling its weight. So I think it's important to dispel the myths and narratives that are formed around when there is no communication, and then establishing this kind of communication and transparency so they don't form in the first place. So I appreciate both of you guys, walking through all of these points. That being said, we've covered a lot here today, but is there anything else on you guys' mind that you'd like to share with listeners before we wrap up?
A quick one for me would just be I really like what Fantom Intern is putting out there. He did a really cool thread the other day on kind of all these network statistics, which I think are a great way to gauge kind of the network itself. And it's not it's not someone telling you what it is. It's just facts. It's just the data that's obvious, and he's kind of just laid it out in a nice way. Whether it's transactions on the network, or whether it's user activity or whatnot. He goes through all these really nice points and kind of lays it out. So I definitely, suggest giving him a follow for his content. I think he's going to be pushing out a lot more cool stuff from just, seeing that kind of quality. And then, it's great to be here with you both and chatting, and it's super cool to be a part of the first episode of Vertical Blocks. I'm excited to see who else is on here after me and the guests that we get on board.
Yeah, Fantom Intern, I think he only joined us like a week or two ago, again, like another hire, and he's going to be there, helping us basically like communicate more, to the Fantom community. So as, Sam mentioned just now, he already just like looked through the data, passed through it, and kind of like explained in like very simple terms, what the data has shown like over the past year, right? And that's shown like significant growth and continued growth for the Fantom network. This Vertical Blocks podcast, this is obviously like the first episode, and in subsequent episodes, we're going to be interviewing people, more so in the team. So you'll be hearing more Bernard from some of the researchers in the team, and you'll get to know like more of the faces behind like the foundation and exactly like what kind of work that they're doing. In addition to that, we're going to get people on the Fantom ecosystem, interesting projects that want to get some exposure, that want to talk about what they're doing. So this will be like very much like a community orientated sort of like podcast, right? But also a podcast where the foundation will be able to like have a say. We'll be able to inform people about what we're working on. and we'll be able to like, show more about like, who is behind the foundation. So this is like really like the first of, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, of many, many episodes to come.
Awesome, guys. Yeah, it's been really fun shooting the first one, and looking forward to seeing what guests we have in the future. We already have some that we've been speaking to, but if you're listening to this and you think you could be a good fit and you're building something awesome, whether that's on Fantom or just general Web3 infrastructure, please reach out. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, follow Fantom on Twitter at FantomFDN, and we're always here to answer questions and chat. So if there's anything you'd like to learn or something you'd like clarification on, you can come straight to the source, and we're happy to help.
And just with that, I'll just give them the exact context so it's easy. So it's info@fantom.foundation. If you email that, we'll all get pinged. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, everyone, for the first episode of Vertical Blocks.
Thanks, Juan.
Thanks, everyone, for